home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
Welcome to the most difficult show of my life. It would take a Moses to lead my listeners across the Red Sea. But I'm not Moses. I'm Michael Savage, a talk show host. Now, all of what you're about to hear today, all of it is one man's opinion. No one else's opinion, only mine. So let me begin at the beginning, because there's only one question in my mind, and I will do the FBI's job for them today. There's only one question, which is, did the Black Lives Movement lead the police into this ambush? Now, why do I ask such an incendiary question? Because all morning we have been trying to find out if the marching route had been published prior to this series of assassinations of the Dallas police officers. We cannot find a permit that was filed by BLM. We cannot find any record of it in the Dallas city office. We cannot find it on the BLM websites. And so since the parade or march route was not published in advance, I would assume that only the Black Lives Matter community organizers knew which direction they would be taking. So now follow the logic, which is not dead in America, especially amongst us old white men who learn to think. Are you following me so far? It seems to me only the Black Lives Movement community organizers knew which direction they would be taking. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. If you're with the Dallas police or with the Dallas City Department and you have a published statement as to which direction this parade route would be taking, I'd like to know it. So if only a few people knew which direction they'd be marching in, the assassins were waiting for them. They were set up, the one or two assassins. It's now down to one or two shooters. This is the germ of the investigation. It's also connected to the vile anti-police rhetoric that has been spewing out of the mouth of Barack Obama and his minions from the day this man was foisted upon us almost 8 years ago. If you remember, this charlatan began the attack upon the police in Boston, Massachusetts, if you remember, with that beer thing. He has had a hatred for the police from the day he started this job. And if you don't think there's a connection between the poison that he and Eric Holder in particular put out all those years, then you are brain dead. And we'll play some of it for you on the program. How about the Southern Poverty Law Center, that group of self-righteous liberal lawyers who have a list of domestic terrorist organizations? What is their criteria to be included on this list of domestic terrorist organizations? Why don't you check it out and see if the Black Lives Matter movement meets that criteria in any way? Who do you blame for instigating this assassination? Who led the cops down the parade route? Who did they coordinate with, the shooters? Do you think Black Lives Matter is a legitimate protest group or a domestic terrorist group? And by the way, this borders now upon the conspiracy theories, but I got to tell you, for the first few hours last night, as I was watching this horror unfold, all I could think of was one thing. Hillary Clinton is no longer in the news. That's all that was on my mind. Yesterday, she was in the crosshairs of America. Yesterday, America saw her to be the liar and cheat and thief that she is. Yesterday, it's the only topic that was on the minds of everyone. Democrat, Republican, most particularly the independents. It was Hillary Clinton. Today, you don't even talk about her. She's gone from the news. Isn't that interesting that the Hillary Clinton scandal is no longer in the news? So we've got an awful lot to talk about. But I want to go back to yesterday. Yesterday, the president was in Poland, and he gave an astonishing speech in which he attacked the police. And I thought it was a coded message. He does it in such a way you don't even hear it, you don't see it, you can't see it, you can't hear it, you can't touch it. The man is the most amazing agitator I've ever seen in my entire life. I've never seen in the history of agitation anyone as skilled as he is in provoking violence and reactions and making it look as though he didn't do it. He's a magician. But he was in Poland yesterday, and he was talking about the shootings of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile. And in that speech, once again, he brought up race. He made race an issue. Now, a leader could have said these two shootings are very tragic. We're going to make sure that there's equal justice in front of the law. We're going to conduct a thorough and fair inquiry, but I want everyone listening to my speech, he could have said, to remain calm, do not provoke violence, do not engage in violence. That is not the American way. He didn't say that. You know what he said? Because I went on my Facebook page yesterday, become a new hobby of mine when I'm not on the radio. It's a new outlet for me. And I put up a question. I found the YouTube of his speech in Poland, which I'm going to play for you in a second, one piece of it. And I asked a single question. Did this speech from the snake trigger the shootings? 179,000 people reacted to it. And they're all over the map. Before that, I had put up a statement, President Zero verbally attacked police from Poland today. Then 3 cops killed by snipers, 7 wounded, as they protect thugs in Black Lives Matter march in Dallas. He signaled the beginning of the civil unrest we all sensed was coming. The snake strikes. That was yesterday. Then I changed it to, did this speech from the snake trigger the shootings? 180,000 people responded all over the map. Then this morning, I posted a picture of a book I did years ago called Stop the Coming Civil War. And I wrote a little one-liner. I predicted this. Stop the coming civil war. Again, answers all over the map. My friends, do you know what Fort Sumter was? Do you know what happened at Fort Sumter? Look up your history. Because what happened yesterday triggers a new phase and a new day in the United States of America. This is not going to end today. This is not going to end tomorrow. This is the beginning of something terrible. Look, I could say, let's all be calm. We all know that. We could do the prayers for the families. We all do that. But that's not what this is about. As I said at the outset of this program, it would take a Moses to do this show properly. I am not Moses. I'm only a talk show host. I cannot part the Red Sea. But I have to walk through this minefield with you today. And I have to state what is on my mind as best I can and retain my rationality as best I can without saying things that I think should be said that can't be said. And you'll have to draw your own conclusions. I will tell you this. The police in America are a tight-knit group. They know that they are under attack. This black revolutionary group took credit for it. They said, we're going to kill more pigs. Jay-Z does lyrics about killing pigs. Vermin on the stages and rap music say, kill the pigs. Disgusting burlesque dancers, prostitutes, shake their hips at the world and say, kill the pigs. And you think this came out of nowhere? You think that those morons in the streets who were taunting the cops last night outside the 7-Eleven don't listen to this filthy music? They do listen to this filthy garbage. And in their pea brains, this is all that's in there. They don't work. What were they doing out 3 in the morning taunting the cops with gang signs and shaking their groins at the cops after their fellow officers lay dead? They don't have jobs. They're wards of the state or they're drug dealers. And the cops had to stand there stoically and take it from those filth. And why were they out there taunting the cops? What did they want to happen? Where did they get these ideas from? Since they have pea brains and can't think for themselves. They get it from their music, and they get it from the left-wing agitators. They get it in the schools. They get it in the media. You look around and you'll see that those deaths did not come in a vacuum. Those deaths were created. They didn't just happen, those assassinations of the police. And if you think this is over, I wish to God I could think alongside you and say, yes, it's over. It is not over. It has just begun. This is the Fort Sumter cannon shot. And the police are going to react. You're not going to know how they're going to react. I'm just telling you what I think is going to happen. They're not going to announce it. They're not going to have any meetings. They're not going to have any protests. I can guarantee you, as sure as I'm standing here, they're not going to let themselves be killed one by one by the lowest elements of this society. Now, if you care to comment on any of this, and I know many of you already slammed in here, I'll give you the number, 855-400-7282. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to have a very important guest on from my affiliate in Dallas, KLIF, Grant Stinchfield, who follows this show with his own show. He's a former reporter, and he has some new news that I didn't know about that you're going to learn on this program across America. But before I go to my first pause, break, whatever you may call it, I want to go back to my number one question. Let me do the job for the FBI. Let me do the job for the Dallas police. They're all reeling from this. They don't know what to think. I don't know who thinks for them anymore, but someone's got to think for them. So I'll be a consultant to the FBI. I'll be a consultant to the Dallas police. Here's the question for you today. Are you ready for it? Was the marching route published anywhere in advance? Did anyone know what route the Black Lives Matter organization was going to take other than the Black Lives Matter organizers? Why does that matter? Because we're asking, how did the sniper or snipers know where the police would be to execute them in this assassination? They were positioned. They were in position. So they knew the cops would be guarding the agitators in the march. And they knew that the cops who were there to protect the marchers would be targets, never expecting to be shot in the back by this piece of garbage and the other piece of garbage that they got somewhere. And God knows how many other pieces of garbage conspired with the piece of garbage. Okay, so they knew the cops would be marching down the street, and they were positioned there with their scoped, whatever rifle he was using. I don't know, it was an AR-15 or whatever. That's irrelevant. So therefore, only the Black Lives Matter community organizers seem to have known which direction they would be marching in. And so the assassins were waiting, weren't they? That, my friends, is the germ of the investigation. I'm only a talk show host. I'm not Moses. I'm Michael Savage, and I'll be back in a minute.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust to protect my wealth. Call 800-BUY-COIN. There is only one question in the minds of anyone investigating whether there's a bigger picture here. And that's the question I asked today that I've seen on no website. I'm just using, logic and common sense here. We've looked all morning. All morning, we have tried to find out if the marching route was posted in advance anywhere. Nobody can find evidence of it being posted in advance, but the police chief of Dallas has said he suspects the shooters knew in advance. So if the shooters, the assassins, the black assassins who killed the police, the white police, knew in advance, how did they know in advance? Who tipped them on the parade route, the march route? There's only one conclusion. And if I am correct in my assumptions, there is a giant conspiracy here, and there has to be arrests, there has to be an investigation, and it leads right back to the organizers of the Black Lives Matter movement as far as I am concerned. Now, I want to say something right here and now. Yesterday, as I was talking about the execution of those two black motorists, I was outraged as I saw the guy on the ground being shot by a cop. I was outraged by it. It looked like an assassination to me, and I said so. I was so outraged that I said I am thinking of marching with the Black Lives Matter organization. That is now over. As far as I am concerned, the Black Lives Matter organization is a domestic terrorist organization, and it should be investigated by the FBI immediately. I was taken in emotionally. It fogged my judgment. How do you like that? Because I watched this Black Lives Matter movement begin, and I know how it began. It began in Ferguson with the false narrative about Brown. Him, hands up, don't shoot, as he was trying to approach the officer and take his gun and beat him up. That was the false narrative that these left-wing murderers put out and started the ball rolling on the BLM movement. So don't think that we're all immune from emotional thinking. I had it yesterday. I don't have it today. I'm very clear-headed about what I'm saying to you today. I was taken in by those shootings, and today I am not taken in by those shootings. Today I am clear as a bell as to what happened and what must be done. And so I again would say that it's up to the FBI, the Dallas police, to look for any connections about this parade, or I keep saying parade, I should say this march, this protest march, having been posted in advance. I don't see any evidence of it. That means only a small cadre of leaders knew what direction they would be going in, which streets they would be going down, which turns they would be taking, what alleys they would be passing. And if they knew that, you have to ask yourself, did someone else know that? And did they tip off the shooters who were laying in wait, either up on a building or behind pillars? Do you understand what I'm saying to you? This is a very important series of questions, because this was not a spontaneous execution of police officers. This is the beginning of one of the biggest changes in American life. And sometimes you can see it. We wake up today and we see that a Black Power group claims responsibility, and they're warning of more assassinations. And last night, a group of individuals were taunting the police right after the murder, calling for the slaughter of pigs. We saw the black agitators dancing and mocking the cops as their fellow officers were dead. We saw them rubbing their crotches. You didn't see any of this? It didn't make it to the local news? Wolf Blitzer didn't play it? I have some Wolf Blitzer tape. This man should be indicted for inciting a riot, in my opinion. I couldn't believe what he did, Mr. Blinky, with the glasses. A man who has long outlasted his tenure on television, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, don't get me started on these people in the media, please. I watched it very carefully, and I saw what they were doing. Blitzer was the worst of all of them. So there's a lot to talk about right here on the Savage Nation. Be here.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. Savage. We're talking about the execution of police officers in Dallas. Was it an orchestrated event? Is there a conspiracy? I know you don't like the word, but it's a very logical question. I'm not going to ask my guest that question, but he has some new information that I think is worth hearing across America. Grant Stinchfield has a show on KLIF, my affiliate in Dallas, right after my program. He knows the area well. He's a former news reporter, and I welcome him to the Savage Nation. Grant, thank you so much for taking the time out today.
Michael, it's a pleasure to be with you. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances.
Amen to that, my friend. So, Grant, what is it that I don't know how many people were involved in this execution? Has that come out yet?
It really is still fluid. And so, as you mentioned, I was a reporter at the local NBC station for many, many years here in Dallas before I ran for Congress and started my conservative talk show on 570 KLIF. And I will tell you, and I want to say this first because this is important, Michael, the Dallas Police Department is one of the finest departments I have ever covered, and I've worked in New York City and Hartford, Connecticut, and places like Florida. They are so good the way they deal with the community. You never see rioting in this city because the police partner with the community. Sure, they have their problems, but these militant evildoers picked the wrong department. They set these officers up to execute them, and this was not the department they wanted to go after. The Dallas Police Department, one of the finest institutions that I've ever covered. And so to answer your question, Michael, it looks like there may be two shooters involved. One obviously died when police basically blew him up with a robot that had a bomb in it. They couldn't get to him, and they made the decision, instead of putting more police officers' lives at risk, they were going to blow this suspect up. That's the Micah Johnson.
Let's pause right there. Is this the first time that a robot was used to kill a suspect in America?
You know, I've been in news 25 years and in radio for another 3, and I've never heard of this before. But, boy, I'll tell you what, this guy couldn't have gone a better way.
No, I'm not crying for the guy who killed the cops. I just never saw this done before.
I haven't either. I was amazed when they said it, that they used it. But, you know, that's a tribute to them, too, because they wanted to protect the community, protect the police officers, and they came up with a creative way to get to this guy. He's in the garage. They can't, I mean, obviously a very, very good shot. He's well armed. And the new information you were talking about, my sources inside the Dallas Police Department are telling me that this shooter, Micah Johnson, was laughing at times during the execution of these officers and singing during the shooting of these officers. And now there may be one other shooter, and they have 2 other suspects in custody as well.
Laughing and singing.
Amazing.
And singing. Well, that leads us to a series of questions which I can't even ask because there's no point to it. He's now atomized from the bomb. We read from the police chief who says we cornered one suspect and we tried to negotiate for several hours. Negotiations broke down. We had an exchange of gunfire with the suspect, and we saw no other option than to use our bomb robot and place a device on its extension for it to detonate where the suspect was. That's truly amazing.
It is, and it goes to the creativity of the Dallas Police Department to keep the community safe, which goes back to the reason why the Black Lives Matter movement picked the wrong department to mess with here. And I agree with you, Michael. You know, I was listening to the beginning of your show, as I do every day while I'm prepping for my show in my studio. And I will tell you, I believe you're spot on. The Black Lives Matter movement, I don't know if there was a conspiracy where they knew the parade route was going, but I'll tell you, they are responsible for this. And Barack Obama is the key cheerleader of the Black Lives Matter movement. And police officers inside the Dallas Police Department have been telling me since Ferguson that Barack Obama's outrageous propaganda and rhetoric against police were going to get them killed. That is the words of police officers, not my words, Michael.
Well, it has already in New York City and other cities. It's happened where people have walked up and shot cops in the head. In the NYPD, this was over a year ago. But, you know, Greg, you follow my show. You're on in the drive time slot or some, I don't know, you're in a great slot in Dallas. And you're in the news business, and I was quite surprised to hear such strong words coming from you. You just outdid me, my friend.
Well, look, I mean, I think it's important that we call this problem what it is. You know, the Obama administration doesn't like to do that at all. They don't like to define an issue. But the Black Lives Matter movement is a militant organization. I have seen it time and time again. They love violence. They love to incite violence. Barack Obama will stand next to the likes of Al Sharpton and cause all kinds of problems. And so I do believe that they are responsible for this. And, you know, I don't like to call them a terrorist organization or domestic terror. You know why? Because I believe that the Obama administration wants us to use terms like that to take away from the real terror and ISIS that's coming for us. I call these violent, militant, extremist groups here at home that want to do us harm. And I don't.
Well, should they? Okay, so that's the question. Are they a legitimate protest group, or because you think they are edging towards violence, as our great Attorney General said about any rhetoric about Muslims? Remember that speech right after she became Attorney General? She said, "We believe in free speech, but any speech that edges towards violence, we will crack down on." We have that soundbite. That applies to Black Lives Matter, does it not?
Of course it does. And you know, I actually believe that the large majority of those people marching are snowed. They're in the dark. They've been duped. And the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement are the ones responsible for this, not the everyday folks. You know, I think they're confused, and I think that, like so many Americans, they open up their minds to the wrong messenger, and they're getting this messenger, and they go march, and they don't even know half of what they're marching about. You know, these police officers were running towards the gunfire. The protesters are running the opposite direction, finally asking police to save their lives. And so our lieutenant governor in Texas used the term, it was hypocritical of the protesters to be running the other direction, looking for police to save them. But police save them anyway, the very group that despises them the most. And police put their lives on the line. They put themselves in harm's way to save those folks.
Well, it leads to a lot of questions and actions that need to follow. Perhaps there has to be a massive United States-wide police strike across America so that people come to understand the danger they're in from the wolves of the streets. Because without the sheepdogs, the sheep will be eaten by the wolves. And the only thing between the sheep and the wolves are the sheepdogs called the police. Maybe it's time for us to recognize that when the police go on strike across America. Let's see how many marchers there go out in the street then.
Yeah, you know, and it's the communities that need the police the most are the ones that complain about them the most. And so,
let me ask you one quick, Greg, again, we're speaking with, Grant Stinchfield, pardon me, from KLIF Radio in Dallas. Grant, pardon me. Grant, let's go back to the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement. Didn't it begin around the time of Ferguson?
It did.
And wasn't it based on the false narrative that Michael Brown was going to the police car with his hands up saying, "Don't shoot," when in fact he was trying to disarm the officer?
Yes.
So the entire movement is built upon a lie.
It is, and you look at the same people that are marching, that are so duped by the movement, they still believe Michael Brown was innocent in all this, and he was just some big bear. Look, the USA Today the other day ran a headline of the shooting, the guy in Baton Rouge that got shot by police, who was tased a few times first, by the way, and didn't obey the police commands. They ran a headline that says, "Father and salesman shot." His rap sheet was about 10 yards long. He had raped a 14-year-old girl, gotten her pregnant. He had burglary charges. He had wrestled with police with guns before. And those are the headlines that are run in the USA Today. Michael, without a voice like yours on a national stage, we are up against it. And so you just keep doing what you're doing, my man.
Well, I'm only, I'm one of many, not only, I'm one of many who are trying to get the truth out there. But where do we go from here? Shouldn't the Black Lives Matter organization now be investigated by the Dallas Police Department for the local chapter, by the FBI, for example?
Well, of course they should. And you raise a very, very good question about, was the parade route published? Because the one thing that the detectives that I've spoken to that are actively investigating this crime, they said this was well-planned and thought out. And if it was well-planned and well thought out, how did they have time to plan it if your assumption is correct that they had no idea where the parade route was going? Somebody had to tell them. I asked the number one question that has to be talked about across America. I could not find any record in the Dallas City Permit Department or anywhere else that this marching route was published in advance. So the police, in essence, were following the march. The police were being led into a blind alley where the assassins were waiting for them to shoot them in the back. That means there must have been prior knowledge by the assassins of the route. So who would have disclosed that to them? Yeah, either it was the organizers of the Black Lives Matter movement or, God forbid, somebody else with knowledge of where the route was going.
When you say God forbid, you don't mean someone where?
Well, I mean, there's only a few people that know. Does someone in City Hall know? I mean, somebody's got to know where the route's going.
Boy, you're going many steps beyond me right now. Yeah, okay. Well, I think we'll leave it at that for the moment. I think we've got America thinking, and I know you've got a show to follow mine in a couple of hours, and you got a lot of work to do yet. Grant Stinchfield, thank you so much for being with the Savage Nation today on this program.
Michael, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, my friends, there are more questions right now than answers, but they don't really matter, do they? Or do they matter? Maybe they matter more than you may imagine. See, we're ready to move on to the next story, aren't we? Yesterday, we were sitting here in shock from Hillary Clinton's lies. We saw the FBI director covering up for Hillary Clinton. Everyone saw that. We saw he said one thing and then did another. And we were all reeling with the knowledge that there's a fix. There are fixes in for people at the top. Is the fix now in for Black Lives Matter and other left-wing radical community organizations? I don't know. Let's talk about it when I come back right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Assist officer, shots fired. Code 3, stay off the radio, officer down.
So we got a guy with a long rifle, we don't know where the hell he's at. Garage. Building! Squad guy, slow down! He's in the damn building right there! Don't know where he's at, he's in that building right here, he's shot from that building! 69, we have got to get DFD down here now, he is one sick right now, 169, get him here!
We're on the way.
Rifles possibly in the El Centro College building.
Suspect is inside the El Centro building, inside the El Centro building.
One of the cops killed in the attack survived 3 tours in Iraq. He was a Mexican-American. How's that for race relations, Mr. Obama? Dallas cop killed in attack survived 3 tours in Iraq. He comes back to America. 3 combat tours in Iraq. He wasn't as a contractor sitting there in an air-conditioned hut. Married father of a 2-year-old daughter. Executed in Dallas. 32-year-old Mexican-American, one of 5 policemen killed by sniper or snipers who assassinated police during the Black Lives Matter march yesterday in Dallas, Texas. Now, I have not yet played something for you, which I meant to play right at the beginning, but I'm going to play it for you now. Because I was shocked yesterday to hear the president's speech from Poland. I want you to listen to it objectively and ask yourself if you come to the same conclusion I did right after hearing it. Clip number 3, please.
As is my practice, given my institutional role, I can't comment on the specific facts of these cases. And I have full confidence in the Justice Department's ability to conduct a thorough and fair inquiry. But what I can say is that all of us as Americans should be troubled by these shootings, because these are not isolated incidents. They're symptomatic of a broader set of racial disparities that exist in our criminal justice system.
Signal, go. Signal, go, downfield, Dallas. Now, that speech would have been wonderful if he gave it today about the death of the cops, but he didn't, did he? Wouldn't it be nice if he said that I'd like to see a thorough and fair inquiry and that all of us as Americans should be troubled by the news, that these are not isolated incidents, meaning the killing of police, but they're symptomatic of a broader set of racial disparities that exist in America as a result of my own mouth and that of Eric Holder, and I resigned today out of shame? Wouldn't that be great? That my rhetoric led to the deaths of these police, and I apologize, and I'm quitting today. I'm staying in Poland because I'm ashamed to come. Yeah, I'm joking. Okay, fine. What a joke. 3 tours in Iraq. Mexican-American, Patrick Zamarripa. Why does it matter that he's a Mexican-American? Because the black revolutionary executioner hated white people, and he wanted to kill white people, especially white officers. Well, here he killed a Mexican-American. So what does that tell you? It tells you that he was an insane man, number one. I'm sure he was insane, by the way. I'm not justifying what he did. I'm telling you, the man was a homicidal maniac. So he uses hatred for whites to go on a homicidal rampage. But there's a bigger conspiracy here, in my opinion. Let us say a bigger... If it's not a conspiracy, he had prior knowledge as to the parade route or the marching route, which was not published. Somebody tipped him as to the march, which direction it would be taking, and he positioned himself along with the other shooter or shooters. Remember at first we were told it was 3, then 4. They triangulated the police. Remember we heard that? Then they backed away from that. Now they said there's only 1, maybe 2. It seems to me already they're parsing the whole story in order to not panic us that there's a bigger story here. But, you know, we have to go with what was and what is. We have 5 dead police, which I think is the largest mass shooting of police in U.S. history. You know, a friend of mine asked me last week, he said, Michael, you've been around a long time or longer than me. He's in the news business. And he said, are these the most violent, these are the most agitated times you've ever lived through? I said, no. The 60s were far worse, when the community organizers who were doing it to us today were young men and young women, and they were using the Vietnam War as a pretext to burning, looting, killing, shooting. And he said, well, what happened? I said, it was endless, number one, but number 2, it ended with the shootings at Kent State. And I said, I predict something like the shootings at Kent State, but in reverse, in this country. Well, my friends, I pause at that juncture. When I come back, we have more surprises for you and straight-out logical analysis on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Talk radio for the thinking person, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
In his mind was an apocalyptic war that would arise from racial tensions between blacks and whites. And it involved reference to the music from the Beatles that I just played from their 1968 double album, the Beatles, known as the White Album. And so what they did was They murdered people in cold blood, including Sharon Tate, butchered her while she was pregnant, and tried to blame it on black people to trigger a race war. Now, thank God he's in prison. But now we have a new problem. It's no longer white female hippies who are 20 years old who are doing this. They're now 70 years old, and they're instigating people who are 20 years old. And so, my friends, you have to ask yourself, why is this happening now? Where did it come from? How did it start? Why are we living through this? I mean, after all, we have a black president. After all, we have the second black attorney general. Shouldn't that have calmed things down? Well, it should have if they were people like Clarence Thomas. Yeah, that would have calmed things down. But they were from the opposite side of the political spectrum. They were left-wing agitators, and still are left-wing agitators, who have gotten where they are through agitation and racial division and using the race card, so why should they stop now? So what I want to play for you is to show you that these executions of the police officers in Dallas did not arise in a vacuum. I'm going to play in a minute some of the sound bites going all the way back to Barry Obama when he first was foisted upon us, right up to the present, and you're going to hear the anti-police rhetoric. Did we play it yet in the last hour? No, we haven't played it. But before I do that, for those of you who can still think, those of you who are not into groupthink, those of you who actually have logical faculties, meaning the majority of Americans who support this country, not the people in the street who were rubbing their crotch last night and giving out gang signs to the police as their fellow officers lay dead, rubbing the crotch, begging the cops to shoot them. I'm not addressing this to them. I'm addressing this to those of you who work for a living, those of you who have studied hard, of all races, by the way, who get up early in the morning and work till late at night, who have logic in your brain. I'm asking you a simple logical question, and you have to ask yourself, am I wrong in even asking it, or am I right in asking it? Because I am doing the job that no one in the media has done until today, and I will take credit for the fact that it must be done. If it is ever done, this is the germ of the investigation that must be conducted by the FBI and or the Dallas Police Department, or any other investigative agency that may be involved in seeing if this execution of the Dallas police was orchestrated, because I think it was. And why do I come to that conclusion? Because we've still been unable to confirm that the Black Lives Matter march route was published in advance. Well, why does that matter? Because if the marching route was not published in advance, only a few people, only a few community organizers knew which direction they would be marching in, which streets, which alleys, which turns they would be taking. Given the assassinations, we have to assume that there was a coordination with the assassins who were waiting for them with scoped rifles. We heard originally that there were 3 or 4 of them, and they triangulated the police and shot them in the back. That means they were waiting for them. That means the police were led into this ambush by a small cadre of people who knew the parade route. That's my opinion. What's yours? And now let's play some of the montage of the anti-cop rhetoric going back to the beginning of this community organizer who's hiding in Poland right now. Listen carefully.
We have seen too many instances of what appears to be police officers interacting with individuals, primarily African American, in ways that raise troubling questions.
Our police officers cannot be and cannot be seen as an occupying force disconnected to the communities that they serve.
If you talk about the last decade or so in this city, was race a factor and a problem in the relationship between police and community? Obviously it was. The relationship between police and community has to change. People need to know that black lives and brown lives matter as much as white lives.
I think that when you have police violence that terrorizes communities, that doesn't show the respect that you're supposed to have from protecting people in your authority, that can feel also terrorizing.
What we also know is that there's still biases in our society, that in split-second situations where people are having to make quick decisions, that studies have shown African American males are seen as more threatening, which puts them in more vulnerable positions.
Pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon. Nice girls, aren't they? Just real sweethearts, real oppressed girls. And then you have the musicians like Jay-Z, from standing on the corners bopping, from dropping some of the hottest verses rappers ever heard. Not so bad yet. From the dope spot with the smoke Glock, fleeing the murder scene, you know me well. Very good. Very high level English. I know 50 words of English. Remember the song I created, my fake rap song? I know 50 words of English and I'm worth 50 mil. Man, that's the country you're living in. 50 words of English. Listen to this. You can't even make rhyme or reason out of it. And they line up around the block to listen to this, which is all about murder and killing and rape and using drugs. And you wonder where they get it in their pea brains from to go out and shoot cops? What do you think, it came out of a vacuum? Okay, so I've laid the groundwork for the show. It's taken me an hour and 15 minutes to do so. And I want to hear some calls at 855-400-7282. But wait, we're going to throw something else in now. If this is not enough for you, there's much more. How do you think Jesse Hyde Jackson responded to the assassination of police officers in Dallas? Jesse Hyde Jackson was over in England, and Jesse Hyde Jackson gave a speech saying it was due to Donald Trump. Listen to clip 14. This is Jesse Hyde Jackson in 14.
Just the permissiveness toward violence against black people is readily apparent, and we've been using scapegoats for deeper economic and cultural fears. But we're not the cause of them. But it's not just Trump, it's the followers of Trump who really believe that somehow that they have lost, the blacks or browns or Muslims, we've globalized capital, like globalizing human rights. The workers' rights, and women's rights, children and environmental rights, and so
Blarney coming out of
and the cause of globalization, but it has meant a lot to those who pursue capital, but not those who lose their jobs, and there's a kind of scapegoating of those who are likewise suffering.
Does anyone know what Hyde Jackson actually said? No, but he worked in the word Trump and Trump supporters. This was on BBC Radio. Now, the top police union chief had it right. He blamed the Obama administration after the Dallas massacre, saying it's a war on cops. This is Bill Johnson, who has it exactly right in clip number 15.
It's a war on cops, and the Obama administration is the Neville Chamberlain of this war. I think their continued appeasement at the federal level with the Department of Justice, their appeasement of violent criminals, their refusal to condemn movements like Black Lives Matter, actively calling for the death of police officers, that type of thing, all the while blaming police and the problems in this country, has led directly to the climate that has made Dallas possible.
That says it all in a nutshell. But, the investigation hasn't even begun yet. The Department of Justice has to have a meeting now. I guess they're meeting around the clock. And, of course, there's only one question, which was it a conspiracy between Black Lives Matter and the assassins? I mean, that's a logical question to ask. What is Black Lives Matter all of a sudden a pacifist group? All of a sudden, there's no connection? You can't even ask the question? Are they the only ones who knew the parade route? Who else knew the parade route? Want to call it a parade? Okay, I'll be back. 855-400-7282. Savage Nation, be here.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust to protect my wealth and financial future. Call 1-800-289-2646. A man in radio wrote a book called Stop the Coming Civil War. It was published in 2014. And in this book, this man wrote the following. He said, did you hear what Eric Holder said? He told his audience that black males are targeted not because they cause more disruption and violence in the classroom, but because they are black. And I wrote, it's Animal Farm upside down. It's doublespeak. It's everything we were warned about since the dawn of social engineering in this country. And then I quoted speeches, graduation speeches, that were given at the time by agitators with names like Michelle Obama, who agitated college crowds. And then we had Nancy Pelosi stirring up racial enmity in her speeches. We had Eric Holder stirring up in his graduation speeches hatred, one after the other. Even Tim Geithner, remember him? A spoiled white rich boy from Queens, New York, who had everything handed down to him as he grew up, had the nerve to get down with the other administrative double speakers to push a biased and untruthful racial message. They were piling on. Then there was Nancy Pelosi, a billionaire woman, acting as if she was a member of the downtrodden, Occupy Wall Street. She had the nerve to speak at my alma mater, UC Berkeley, and tell the crowd that they should be disruptors. Could you believe this? I have the speeches. I'm not going to play them. She incited the graduating seniors from UC Berkeley to become disruptors. So you think that these murders came out of a vacuum? You're mistaken. There's blame, my friends, and there's a long arc that goes back quite a ways for this series of these murders. I want to take some calls. Joe on WABC. Time is short. What's your message, please? Fire away.
Mr. Savage, I want to thank you for bringing out some points that the mainstream media won't, specifically the failure of our president to have calming words and calm the nation through this difficult time. Now, we have an unsettling shooting in Baton Rouge, and clearly there's problems with it, but what he fails to talk about is that we have to let the investigation play out, because you have a man who has a criminal record, who's over 300 pounds, resisting arrest, and in the video you cannot see if his right hand is in his pocket where he's carrying an illegal firearm. But instead of doing that, our president fans the flames and seems to make things worse. And we saw the result.
Correct. He should have said we have to calm down. He didn't. He said there was racial reasons for the shooting from Poland. And I believe that triggered some of the violence that we're seeing.
Fan the flames of it.
In other words, he gave them a pass to go and do what they wanted. I mean, I make believe I'm talking to a guy in a bar. If a president gets up and says it's racial disparity that caused the killing of the black men, so a crazy guy like the shooter says, okay, I'm going to go kill whites.
They're not the words that he should be using. The night of the shooting, he was talking about the disparity of races in prison, how there's more blacks in prison than whites. As a member of law enforcement, we don't care the race of the perpetrator. You call 911, we respond. He goes to jail. Black, white, doesn't matter.
We have a community organizer who's gotten where he is by turning one race against the other, one sex against the other, one sexual orientation against the other, the rich against the poor against the rich. The man is a steamer upper of classes. He lives off division. That's how he got where he is. And he isn't going to stop, Joe. He's never going to stop, Joe. This is how he got where he is. He's not going to stop, Joe. And I thank you for the call from New York City. Now let's go to Josh on WJR in Detroit, Michigan. Josh, fire away. You're on the Savage Nation.
Thanks for having me. I wanted to touch on the topic about the Black Lives Matter being associated with the terrorist group. I think you guys are a little bit off base. The premise behind it is not that Mike Brown had his hands up and was asking the officers not to shoot. The premise behind it was that he did not deserve to die. Whether he committed a crime or not, he did not deserve to die. Philando Castile, the governor of Minnesota, said yesterday that had he been a white male, that he does not believe that he would have died. That was
so, Josh, you're not justifying the execution of the police. I'm sure you're not doing that.
Absolutely not. I'm not an advocate of violence by any means. That's not going to change it. What's going to change it and what's going to is start the dialogue, start the conversation. You have to understand, as a black man in America, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of the cops.
Really? Why would you be afraid of the cops? What have you done that would make you afraid?
I've not done anything. I'm an educated black man. I'm married. I have a son that's going to be on the way in September. And as my wife and
All right, so let's have the dialogue. I grew up as a poor white boy in Queens. I wasn't black, so I can't speak for your experience. But I was taught by one of the men in my father's circle that if a cop ever pulls you over for anything as small as a traffic ticket or a broken taillight, don't open your big mouth. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. This is 50 years ago. Keep your hands on the steering wheel and follow his instructions. Don't open your big mouth. You think that has something to do with the disparity in the kinds of incidents we're talking about?
and before Diamond, Castile's fiance.
But no answer. No answer. Like I said, nothing. Where's the dialogue?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Now let's talk about Attorney General Loretta Lynch, who gave a pablum-like speech today. Thank God she didn't revert to what her boss did, call for anything like gun control in the midst of this execution of 5 cops. Attorney General a while ago, after the San Bernardino terrorist attack, immediately covered for Muslim terrorists, or let us say, if not overt terrorists, let's say supporters of, sympathizers with Muslim terrorists. She gave a speech that was alarming and crazy. Right after the killing by a Muslim of non-Muslims, she went out and worried about Muslims. And she said this. Robert, play it so the people can judge for themselves.
Now, obviously, this is a country that is based on free speech. But when it edges towards violence, when we see the potential for someone lifting that mantle of anti-Muslim rhetoric, or, as we saw after 9/11, violence directed at individuals who may not even be Muslims but may be perceived to be Muslims.
Now substitute the word police for Muslims, Mrs. Lynch. Or is it Ms. Lynch? I don't know what it is, nor do I care. Ms. Lynch. What if she said, this is a country that's based on free speech, but when it edges towards violence, when we see the potential for someone lifting that mantle of anti-police rhetoric, blah, 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 then she will take action. But she didn't say that. Now, Black Lives Matter, Black Panthers, and other protest groups have been calling for killing police officers and making statements that edge on violence for a long while now. Why have they not been prosecuted by Loretta Lynch's Justice Department? I'm asking a question. It's logical to me. Just substitute the word police for Muslim. That would have been appropriate for Loretta Lynch today, wouldn't it, Robert? When it edges towards violence, when we see the potential for someone lifting the mantle of anti-police rhetoric, when we see that, we will take action. I didn't hear that from Loretta Lynch today, did you? Now, don't tell me that Black Lives Matter has no violent rhetoric in any of their speech-making. I've heard it. And who are they affiliated with? Are they affiliated with Black Panthers or the other groups that march around with guns and scream for murder and revolution? I've heard it all. And I'll get back to the investigation itself. This is a little worrisome to me. 1 hour ago, police now considering theory of lone gunman. How did it go from 3 or 4 shooters triangulating the police, shooting them in the back, to now the theory of a lone gunman? Where is this coming from? Where are the other gunmen? Who are the other suspects? What is this, another cover-up? What do we need, the Zagruda tapes? I think we have the Zagruda tapes from last night. This is going to be like the JFK now. I mean, the only name to emerge throughout the day is that of local U.S. Army Reservist Mika Johnson, who was blown up by a robot-controlled explosive device. But there were others. There were other shooters, right? Authorities do not believe that Johnson and 3 other suspects who have since been arrested are part of a larger group. Sure they are. Of course they're part of a larger group. How did they find out where the police were going to be marching? That'd be part of a larger group. Who gave them the parade route? Part of a larger group. How did they know where to sit to shoot the cops in the back? Because they were tipped off by part of a larger group. Now, Chief Brown did not identify Johnson by name, but said the shooter was not affiliated with any other groups and stated that he did this alone. How does he know that? How could Chief Brown know he did this alone so fast? Cover up. Everything that we hear from every official is a cover up, cover up, cover up, cover up. So, my friends, where do we go from here? We can't have any more racial agitation in this country by anyone, because it's going to turn into an explosive race war, which nobody wants. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that we're there already, because there has been a race war. 5 cops were killed yesterday, and several more were wounded by a black man who said he hates white people and wants to kill white cops in particular. Now, amongst the cops killed, there was a Mexican-American war hero, 3 combat tours in Iraq. He comes back and gets executed by this man yesterday. So don't tell me that I'm doing it. Don't tell me I'm making things worse. I told you at the outset of this show, I am not Moses. It would take a Moses to do this 100% right. I'm one man. I'm an American. I've lived through a lot of phases of American history. I've seen a lot of things from beginning to end. And I'm telling you that we're in a mild civil war right now. Years ago, I wrote a book called Stop the Coming Civil War. In it, I feared something like this would happen. It is the beginning of a very long, very hot summer, and the agitator-in-chief is not making things better. He has not yet come out from his podium and his big speeches there in Europe to keep them from leaving the oppressive Angela Merkel, who wants to turn them into serfs, to give one speech telling those in the Black Lives Matter movement to calm it down and to cool it. I haven't heard those words come out of his mouth. He could calm them down with one sentence. Where's Michelle Obama calming it all down? Nowhere. Instead, we have lyrics that incite riots and incite hatred. Do I have to play any of the lyrics for you? Go ahead, play it just for a break. Play one of the black rappers. You'll hear the great literacy of the rappers.
Pray your father's father wasn't touching this little good.
Okay, it's not my cup of tea. Fine, I'm from another generation, from another world. Maybe some love the music, but the fact of the matter is, there are people who get their ideas from such individuals, and the lyrics of these rappers is not exactly pristine with peace. Let's put it to you that way. WSBA Radio, Steve, go ahead, comment on the Savage Nation.
This is Dave, actually, but I just wanted to tell you, I mean, this whole thing, you're exactly right. It's a cover-up. It's just like JFK, and even your prediction about, Obama could possibly be arming, black gangs in the U.S.
I didn't say that. And you never heard me say that. When did I say arming black gangs? Oh, he hung up already. Okay. We had the conspiracy theorist who had 13 seconds of fame. All right, let's move on. WABC in New York. By the way, you're all invited to call the show. I'm just warming up, by the way. Bottom line here is anti-police rhetoric has turned deadly. It goes back to when the community organizer was foisted upon us. He is still following the rules for radicals by Saul Alinsky. Divide and conquer. He has not changed. Milton on WABC. Go ahead, please. You're on the Savage Nation.
Hello?
Yes, Milton. Fire away.
Yes, I'm calling. I'm not a very good speaker, but I think we got it all wrong. I'm not holding whites or blacks accountable. I'm holding black entertainers and athletes, famous people like Oprah Winfrey and all them billionaires not doing nothing for the community, study marching around, begging for mercy, and, all they leading into this. Because how you explain for Jay-Z and all these people, the president running around with them, they is containing the neighborhood. Like you said earlier, they teaching this ignorance, and they getting paid for it, so they leading us to slaughter.
Well, thank God you said it. I don't feel quite as far out on a limb as I did before, Milton. But you're from another generation. I think you're an older guy. Am I right?
They're not doing nothing for the neighborhood. This is not white or black. This is good and bad.
No, my mother said the same thing. In all races, there's good and bad. I was taught that since I'm a child. But Milton, you're an older man, aren't you?
Yes.
Well, what age are you in?
56. And I am.
All right. You're not an old man by any means. You're middle aged, but you do come from another time. And you've seen this country change. I don't want to lead you with any questions, but we all know this is not a good thing that's happening, and we know it's getting worse, not better. And how could that be going on if we have a black president and a black attorney general and billionaire black entertainers? Why is it getting worse, not better? I think you put your finger on the whole thing here.
It's not
because they're agitating. They're agitating the ignoramuses in the street.
But it's not white and black. It's the devil. Whites work for the devil, black work for the devil, and they trying to get exactly what you started or what I started. The devil wants the world destroyed, and they using this.
Now you're getting into a religious issue, which I certainly don't want to avoid, but I could get into it at another time in a little more depth. But I do believe the devil is loose, the devil is afoot, and I do believe that there are people who look like human beings who are actually devils, and demons, if you want to call them that. And I have said so before. I don't think that everybody who wears a suit and a tie that looks perfect is perfectly clean and perfectly innocent. Some of them are actually devils in human bodies.
And
I'll leave it at that. I would send you a book, but I don't think Milton, do you want a copy of any of my books?
I would take a copy. I'm open to anything, but I don't know. I'm not a very good speaker. I just want to make the point.
Well, you don't have to be a great speaker to make a great point. Some great speakers make no points, and some poor speakers make wonderful points. So stay on the line. I'm going to send you Government Zero. Maybe you'll find something in there of some interest to yourself. We have 2 open lines on the Savage Nation today. It's not an easy day for any of us. It's not a day to be celebrated or sit here and, get over on anybody. I think we have to ask ourselves a question: how are we going to stop this? And there's only one question that we should be asking. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in the conspiracy of links between the marchers and the death of the cops. Was there a plan? Were the assassins tipped off to the marching route so they could shoot the cops in the back? That's a very important question, because if it does lead to people within the city government or to Black Lives Matter or any other organization who knew which way they were going to be marching, that is a major conspiracy. That's a big conspiracy that needs to be looked into. With this Justice Department, I doubt we're going to find the answer to it. And with the Dallas police chief saying it's only one shooter, I doubt they're going to investigate this thoroughly. I really don't think we're going to get to the bottom of this. They're going to try and sweep it under the rug to put it behind them so that we move on. That's what's going to happen now. Yesterday already, we forgot Hillary. And we forgot the FBI director's name already. 12 hours later, we forgot Mr. Comey's name. 12 hours later, we forgot the whole Hillary scandal. It's over already. So the fact of the matter is, when will this be over? It's over already. Look at the newspapers already. They've gone to the next news story. 5 officers shot dead, others critically injured, and already they're on to something else. You look at the headlines, you scratch your head. How is this even possible? You look at the headlines in the New York Post, it's about a slut lifting her skirt, the other one posing upside down. I don't understand Murdoch Jr., how he can run a newspaper like this. Some Hollywood slut stood in her hands. They already made it like front page news on the NewYorkPost.com. I've never seen anything like. You talk about a deranged society. That girls think they have to stand on their hands with their pants falling off for people to look at them, and that's considered a celebrity. So what do they do with their celebrity? They go to a stupid party in the Hamptons, or they go on a dumb yacht somewhere with other drunken, stoned idiots? That's the role model that you see with the rappers and everyone else? That's the sum total of human existence. And then they put out the rhetoric that, the communities need this, the communities need that. They don't spend 1/10 cents on the poor black communities, do they? Or Jesse Hyde Jackson with his silk suits, flying around blaming Donald Trump today. How much money has Jesse Jackson given to poor black people in this country in his entire life? Does anyone know if he's ever given 10 cents of the money he's raised? How much money has he given to the poor? All he does is talk about hatred and divide people. So what's the solution to all of this? I said I'm not Moses. Moses might have the answer. I don't have the answer. The country is falling apart. It is divided. It is broken. It is like a powder keg that has gone off. Not a powder keg that's about to go off. It has gone off. Those killings yesterday changed your life forever. You may not know it. Just as the Hillary hearings changed your life forever, and they did, because you found out that there's not only 2 but maybe 10 sets of rules in this country. She walked away from crimes that put other people in prison. They're in jail for doing less than what Hillary did. We found that out yesterday. And we also found out today, what did we find out today when we woke up? I couldn't go to sleep last night. I was up till wee hours in the morning. I couldn't stop watching it. And it changed from 4 shooters. Now it's 1 shooter. And now move on. There's nothing to see here. No. There's a lot to see here. It was Fort Sumter. I'll be back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Hey, our Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust for wealth insurance, gold and silver. Call 800-BUICOIN. So this is the filth that incites. This is the filth that incites those with pea brains out there, and that's how police get killed. And then they're justified in their crimes by saying, the cops are racist pigs. And so therefore, then the white liberals step in and say, they're all innocent. No thug deserves to be arrested. They're being picked on by racist KKK police. So, I have a Facebook account, Michael Savage, and I read some of them. And here's one that came from a gentleman named Rashon Williams. To show you how deep the racial hatred runs, Mr. Williams writes, why would you think that black people would show emotion for dead cops? IMAO. I don't know what that means. What does IMAO mean, Robert? What? I don't know. Oh, he's laughing. I get it. And he says, we're going about our day as usual the same way white people do when blacks get killed by the police every day. And he writes STFU, which I guess is a curse. Then the literate genius, Rashon Williams, the Shakespeare of our time, says, don't investigate Black Lives Matter. Investigate the KKK and white supremacy in America. That's the real problem. And he says, Savage, you're a shame to this country. Thank you, Rashon. If I'm ashamed to you, that I'm doing my job. So you see the kind of people out there, they're actually celebrating the death of the police. Don't assume now that people are unhappy in the black community. They're all mourning over this. And don't think that they're not high-fiving the way Palestinians high-fived after 9/11, many of them. Don't assume it's all good now. Don't assume that, oh, my God, the Black Lives Matter people have come to their senses. They're not going to incite this anymore. Or that any of the singers like Jay-Z are suddenly going to stop their inflammatory lyrics. No. Don't assume it at all. They're high-fiving right now. That's what I think. So don't think this is over. This has just begun. It's a terrible thing to say, but I'm a realist, and I'm a human being, and I live in America, and I hope you do as well, because we've only got one country.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage. Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Talk radio for the thinking person, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
Who's your whipping boy? Who do you blame for the execution of 5 policemen and the severe wounding of others, shot in the back by I'm sorry to say, I have to say it, at a Black Lives Matter rally by a black man who shot them in the back. And then when one officer laid down on the ground, he executed him with 5 more shots. I don't see any outrage in the media over that. I don't see Wolf Blitzer's glasses steaming up over that one, do you? And yet Wolf Blitzer, I'm going to give you an example of how evil the liberal media is. He's gotten away with such evil his whole life because he looks like a nice old man with gray hair and glasses. Do you know what he did on CNN this morning? I almost blew it today. Again, I don't go into the TV too much, but I did today. He interviewed a white girl, Wolf Blitzer, that is, and he said to her, you were recently stopped at a traffic stop for the exact same thing, a broken taillight, and you were treated differently. Would you tell us how it went down? And then this girl gave her little speech about how it went down, how different it was. That was Wolf Blitzer setting it up to make it look like the cops were stoned KKK members out to kill black people. Now, I got to tell you something. I told you in a little bit in the last hour, repeat it again. Many decades ago, when I was a kid, I was told by an older man in the crowd, if you're ever stopped by a cop for a light is out on your license plate, a broken muffler, because we drove broken cars when we were poor. Imagine things like that, broken mufflers, broken taillights. It's hard to believe, in this age of perfect cars, we drove them and we got stopped. You always keep your mouth shut. The guy said to us, say yes, sir, follow his instructions, give him the license, shut your mouth, and deal with it in a court of law. Don't challenge the cop because you're not going to win. That's how I was raised. Now, when you have a whole generation of kids raised without fathers, many of them without mothers, they're like street urchins. They hate all authority. They do the same to the teachers that they do to the cops. They're like wildings in the streets. And then you have these ignoramuses fed garbage by rap stars trying to sell them their music, by left-wing agitators who want to create an army of the night in the streets. What you have is what you have. That's what you have is what you have. This is what happens when you have this. That is what you get. you get that. When you have this, you get that. You want me to go into a little lyrics here and a little rap? I'll be happy to do it. I'll get off the logical and go into the rap if you like. Because I've had 2 hours and 5 minutes now of straight out, incendiary, incandescent logic. But it's all factual what I said to you. There's almost no rhetoric in what I said in the last 2 hours. The killing of these 5 cops has changed America forever. It will never be the same. And there's a lot of blame to go around. It goes right up to the top. A fish rots from the head down. His anti-cop rhetoric has produced this. If we lived in a sane society, he would step down. If we had a decent man in the White House, he would have retired a long time ago. If we had a legitimate Congress, he would have been impeached a long time ago. But what's the point of me saying that? I can say it from today until the end of the term. Excuse me. I could say that from today until the end of the term. What term? Now I read the conspiracy sites. The elections will be suspended, civil disobedience. I don't know. Who knows? What's the real truth? Who is really behind this? Was there a connection between the Black Lives Matter organizers and the ambush of the police? Why would I ask that? Here's a logical question. We searched all morning to find the march route. It was not published anywhere. So who knew which direction what streets they'd be marching on? The leaders of the march. The rabble didn't know where they would be going, right, Jim? The rabble didn't know what street they'd be going down. The rabble were busy having a good time, screaming, marching, yelling, rubbing their pants, jumping around, giving gang signs to police as they went out, feeling really like tough guys. And so they didn't know where they were going. They were just following the snake. The snake was snaking through the streets of Dallas. Someone was leading it who knew where they would be going. And waiting in the darkness were the assassins, 1 or 4, however many there may have been, who shot the police in the back. So it begs the question of, did they tip it off to the... Because this was organized very well, according to everybody's reporting. Really carefully organized, right? The shooters were laying in wait. They knew where to wait. They knew where the parade route would be. I mean, do I need a Zagruda tape again now? We have to do that? We're back to JFK and a conspiracy theory? This is not a conspiracy. They knew the route. No one published the route. Someone tipped them of the route. Who tipped them of the route? That's the whole question. And who's going to investigate it? That's what I'd like to know. Who will investigate this? Who is going to investigate who tipped off the assassins? That's what we need to know. 855-400-7282 is the phone number. Many people have different opinions on this, and they're taking different approaches than I would. That's to be expected. It's a country of many different minds and many different attitudes. And I don't expect everyone to agree with me. I don't expect anyone to agree with me necessarily. But I have to ask this. If you want fairness in the country, why is it that Loretta Lynch states right after the San Bernardino terrorist attack by a Muslim on non-Muslims, and she comes out with a speech that I have to play over and over and over again. I want you to listen to this little talk from your Attorney General almost a few weeks after she was appointed, a few months. And I want you to substitute the words anti-Muslim for anti-police and ask you why she didn't give that speech today with anti-police in it. Let's play it again, Sam.
Now, obviously, this is a country that is based on free speech. But when it edges towards violence, when we see the potential for someone lifting that mantle of anti-Muslim rhetoric, or, as we saw after 9/11, violence directed at individuals who may not even be Muslims but may be perceived to be Muslims, and they will suffer just as well, just as much. When we see that, we will take action.
Really? Okay, that's great. Why don't you take action today against the anti-police language that edged not towards violence, but resulted in the assassination of 5 cops and the wounding of many others? And by the way, today it's gotten worse. Cops are being targeted across America by the very same gangbangers. Officers in several states targeted in attacks today. It didn't end in Dallas. It began in Dallas. And it didn't even begin in Dallas. Targeted in Tennessee, Georgia, Missouri, right after the assassinations. No, it didn't calm down. No, the rappers haven't stopped. They've escalated. The rappers are going to make a fortune off this. They're going to sell more of their polluted garbage. The filth will continue to be disseminated. My friends, the game is going to get much worse. You're going to look at the rappers and you're going to say someone's got to stop them. Oh, no, we believe in free speech. But wait a minute. Loretta Lynch said that when the language edges towards violence against Muslims, we will take action. Mrs. Lynch, we're appealing to you, Ms. Lynch, because we've seen the free speech of rap music and the speeches at the Black Lives Matter rallies, not only edging towards violence, but resulting in violence and deaths. And we saw nothing from you today but pablum, bad cereal, bad warmed over pablum that nobody wants to eat. Where are the rappers today telling everyone to calm down? Where are these great men with their caps on and their glasses? Where are they telling them not to kill? You see anyone get up yet and give a speech to not kill and to stop it and cool it and stop provoking the police? I haven't seen it yet. Maybe it'll occur sometime today, and I'll consider it a miracle. No, my friends, the police are under attack by black revolutionaries. There is a war that has been declared against the police. But it did not start today. It started when Obama took office. It was escalated with Eric Holder in the Attorney General's office. It was escalated by Bill de Blasio, whatever his real name is. Goethe, I don't know what his German name is. Bill de Blasio in New York steamed up the crowds again so he can continue his pay-for-play administration while pointing his finger at the cops. He put them at risk, and cops were then shot and killed in New York. So don't think this occurs in a vacuum. The P-brains are provoked, my friends. The P-brains are provoked by very intelligent people who know how to organize them and motivate them and have them go off like fireworks. It's a very bad time for America. Remember the song I played for you? Remember I made a reference to Charles Manson with Helter Skelter? Do you see what is going on in front of your eyes? I hope you see that there's a bigger picture here. And I hope you understand that this didn't occur in a vacuum. And I hope you understand that the community organizers who are running America want Helter Skelter. Because by dividing, they conquer.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Your Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust for tangible assets, gold and silver. Call 800-BUI-COIN.
Michael Savage, weekdays from noon to 3 on Talk Radio 560 KSFO.
It's not just the police. There is a rage race, but acid rain comes top down, not bottom up. It's a kind of anti-black mood, anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim bashing, immigrant bashing, female bashing. As a kind of mean-spirited division.
So one of the most divisive, one of the most divisive agitators in American history, Jesse Hyde Jackson, gives a speech today with no sympathy for the cops. But he comes up with a potpourri, anti-black, anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim, female bashing. Where did he come up with this? What does it have to do with dead policemen from a black racist maniac who said he hates whites and want to kill whites? Look what he comes up with. He's been in the hate business his whole life. Hyde Jackson. So don't think this came out of the air, the thin air. And by the way, it just got worse. Unfortunately, what I feared would happen is happening. More police were shot today by more blacks. Tennessee, black man fires at police officers on a highway. Opens fire. Black man opens fire. One woman's dead. 3 others, including 1 police officer, injured. Tennessee. Suspect, 37-year-old Lakeem Keon Scott. Scott, who was black, was wounded in the shootout with police. He remains hospitalized. He's not yet been charged. Guess he has to be vetted by the Justice Department. All those shot by Lakeem were white. This is hours after 12 officers were shot in the back at a so-called Black Lives Matter protest in Dallas by a black man who police say declared blah, blah, blah. Okay. Another one today, man arrested for allegedly shooting at police in Georgia. Roswell, Georgia, early Friday morning. Suspect, 21-year-old Victor Alonzo Magia Nunez. According to WSB-TV, the unnamed officer was patrolling in this area when Nunez fired a shot at him from a passing vehicle. Officer not hit. Brave officer gives chase, and Nunez crashed his vehicle after a short pursuit. I wonder where Nunez is today. Has he been invited to Loretta Lynch's office to give a speech, to receive a Presidential Medal of Freedom? I don't know yet. We'll have to see if he's invited to the White House when Mr. Poland comes back from his Kielbasa visit. Maybe they'll have them all over there for a celebration, give him some kind of award for being brave enough to stand up to the man. KLIF, Chris, welcome to the Savage Nation.
Hi, Mr. Savage. I just wanted to say real quick, I have a background in the military, and it'd be very interesting as this goes on. I actually work down in the Dallas area. It'd be very interesting to see how this plays out as far as the investigation for only being one shooter. That's just, there's too much pandemonium tactically for that. And furthermore, to hear that we're still making cops the demons here makes absolutely no sense to me at all.
Well, who is making the cops the demons? The media's still doing it, aren't they? Right after the murder of the cops, Wolf Blitzer and the vermin on CNN in particular went back to the false narrative of the killing of the black men at the traffic stops. They went back to it again. Again, they steamed up the blacks to start killing.
I just ask if for anybody who is listening and all your listeners that, you're always very generous to us veterans, and you always thank us for our service. So do a favor. Go shake a hand of a cop today because they deserve it.
Well, I don't know what I would do if I were a cop today. I got news for you, but thanks for the call. I don't know what I would do if I were a cop today. If you saw what went on in Dallas last night and you had to get up and go on your route, your duty route today, you put on the vest, you see your wife sleeping, your kids sleeping, what would you do today? Tell me how you'd feel today as a cop as you had to go out in the streets of San Francisco or Oakland, California. How do you feel as you walk? Well, they don't walk that much, but let's say drive through certain neighborhoods. When you know that you can't protect yourself until you're fired upon. When you know that the vermin who run these cities, these rats, these left-wing thieves and criminals who run these rotting cities, who steal the treasuries blind, would crucify you faster than they did to Jesus Christ. They'd crucify you as a cop faster than Jesus was crucified if you protected yourself by acting first rather than waiting until you're dead or shot at before you can do anything. The age of preemptive policing is over because of the liberal criminals. The criminals from the Senate to the Congress to the mayor's offices, they're pandering to the mobs. They've attacked the police. They made your job almost impossible. Do you know that in Dallas, they've lost almost 30% of their officers before the shooting because it had become almost impossible to police Dallas? The gangs were out of control. I said this before, and I have to say it again. This whole war against the police, I saw this as a war of the gangs, the drug dealers. And they were using civil rights as a game to get over on the police, so the police couldn't even arrest them anymore. Did you know that? I don't know if you saw this. Do you know that one of the so-called innocent motorists who was in a scuffle and got killed the other day, came out only today, was a member of the Crips gang? He wasn't the innocent worker that we were told. He was a member of the gang. He had committed many felonies. But I didn't hear that until this morning. Why, yesterday I had sympathy for these poor people until I found that they weren't so simple. The media had deceived even me, and I'm as cynical as they come, into thinking he was just an innocent guy shot in the scuffle. He was a violent gang member with a rap sheet as long as, well, I can say something here as someone's on, but I don't want to say that. This is the Savage Nation. It's a very dangerous time. Stay tuned. All right, you get the picture. You get the picture. The message goes out on the tom-tom to the P-brains, and cops are dying. Now, it continued today. It didn't end yesterday. It just began yesterday, as I feared. Here in Georgia, Valdosta, Georgia, a man calls 911, ambushes an officer. As he gets out of the car, he shoots him. Cop lives matter. 4:20 p.m. today, East Coast time. A man calls 911 in South Georgia to report a break-in. Shoots the officer who comes to investigate. Both men were wounded in the ensuing gunfire. Notice how the AP writes it. They're equal now. Both are expected to survive. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, both men, they're equal men. Georgia Bureau of Investigation says in a news release that 22-year-old Stephen Paul Beck called 911 saying his car was broken into Friday morning. Officer Randall Hancock comes to investigate. Beck shoots at him as he gets out of his car. He's shot twice in his protective vest and once beneath the vest in his abdomen. You know what kind of wound that is? If the cop survives, he's injured for life. He's a cripple for life. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation says the motive is unknown, and there's no indication the shooting was connected to the shootings of 12 officers in Dallas. No connection at all. No motive. Move along. We have no idea why. Probably a deranged young man. Probably was looking for a job and frustrated. The system failed. You get the picture. It's not happening in a vacuum. Not at all. More going on, by the way, around the country, one after the other, state after state. Valdosta, Georgia. Missouri cop shot during traffic stop after turning back the suspect. Comes day after Dallas police attack. New York Daily News. Moments ago. New York Daily News, another one. Goes on and on and on. Doesn't stop. Just began. Started by whom? Oh, who started it? Let's let the listeners themselves see who they remember started the anti-cop rhetoric. When did it start? Jim, KBET, you're calling the Savage Nation. When did this anti-police rhetoric start, and who did it start with?
I'm a police officer's father who was killed 7 years ago, and we attend these annual meetings in memory of the officers. And some of the statistics would astound me, but the main one is that on an average, every 36 hours, a police officer is killed or dies. And I started thinking about that since we're emotionally connected to that. And it started exactly the very beginning of Obama's term when he cited the police up in Harvard where a professor was supposedly breaking into a house. That's the very first time it started, and it's grown ever since.
That was the famous beer summit with Barack Obama in Cambridge, Massachusetts, if I recall correctly. That's when Obama showed his true orientation.
That's exactly.
There's nothing I can say other than I feel very, very sorry for the pain that you carry with you on a daily basis. But the rhetoric now that is coming out of the mouths of the media, the false narrative of oppressed black men who are being executed by evil police, this is what's killing the police. Do you agree with that?
Yes, my son was a corrections officer, and he didn't say much, but the people the police deal with, you cannot conceive of the problem that they must present to them and have to deal with. It's just totally. Well,
all of these lily white liberals who agitate along with the Black Lives Matter organization may find out one day what happens when the police don't show up for work. There's nothing we can say other than nothing. There's nothing to say right now. Nothing to say at all. Except if you want to say anything, go ahead. Make my day. KLIF, Richard, you're on the Savage Nation. What's your point?
Hey, Mike, thanks for taking my call. I'm a big problem solver, and I was just wondering, is there any way with 21st century technology we can make, like, rubber bullets or stun guns, something where you could hit the suspect and you don't kill him? Is there any kind of high voltage?
Well, that's a sympathetic idea. I've thought of it when I was a child, before I became a man. You do know that one of the poor innocent men who were killed the other day in the traffic stop had been tased before he was shot. Did you know that?
I did not, but I just wanted to know.
Well, no, because Wolf Blitzer withheld that from you. And Wolf Blitzer withheld from all of us the fact that he was a known gang member, a member of the Crips. He had a rap sheet longer than Wolf Blitzer's tongue. We heard he was just a poor restaurant worker reaching for his license. But we didn't know any of the other details. The cops had tried to subdue him peacefully. They couldn't. They used the tase. It didn't work. You know, I don't have an answer for the problem. If you have deranged, out of control, very powerful human beings who are able to break through the constraints of a normal human being trying to constrain them, or two normal human beings, and they don't respond to a taser, what would you do if your life's in danger?
I think that gives you full authorization to use deadly force. But the thing is, I think...
I'm not celebrating it. Believe me, I'm not celebrating it. But the fact of the matter is, what would you do if you were trying to arrest someone who broke the law and you couldn't constrain him, and the next thing you know, he can grab your gun and kill you? What would you do?
I have to say I got to use lethal force here, but I just think our police officers are equipped with the right equipment, especially in Democratic-controlled cities. Do they have the right equipment? Are they wearing bullets?
No, I said they used the taser on the guy. It didn't work. It was like it didn't affect him at all. He was like Frankenstein.
Right.
But we wouldn't know. We wouldn't learn that from Wolf Blitzer. Didn't tell us he was Frankenstein. He was just a peaceful cafeteria worker, complying with the officer, and he got killed for no reason. That was the narrative of the vermin on CNN. They'd like you to believe the cops are all members of the KKK. At night, they put on white sheets and go out and talk with each other in the dark of night at graveyards on how to assassinate poor innocent black men. That's the narrative being put out by CNN and MSNBC right now as I speak. Well, look, I'm laying it on the line. I'm talking with my audience the way I talk with people. Any people I would meet, this is what I would say. And it's going to get worse because the media is responsible for this as much as it is Obama, de Blasio, and Eric Holder and the others who have fueled the flames. A lot of thoughts just came through my mind when the man was speaking to me about it, about non-lethal force. Because all of us human beings don't want to see another human being who is innocent or even a guilty human being killed for no reason. Now, of course, the other side has people who are not human. They're not human beings. Anyone who would lay in wait with a rifle and shoot cops in the back is already no longer a human being. He slipped beneath the level of a human being. And you have to ask yourself, who put the hatred in his head like that? Who steamed him up to believe that every cop, any cop wearing a blue uniform should be killed? Who would lead him to believe that that's the right thing to do? Well, I say the musicians. Listen to the rap music for all these years. These very wealthy, very talented rap musicians. You think there's no responsibility there? Disagree with you. Listen to the rhetoric of MSNBC and CNN the day after the shooting, or in fact, within minutes of the shooting, how they went right back to the false narrative of the traffic stops. Right back to it. Is there no responsibility there? Jeff Zucker of CNN, no responsibility in old Jeff Zucker's pocket? Disagree with you there. Go down the line and you'll see that there is a reason this is happening. And remember one thing and never forget this. I'm in the media. If it burns, it earns. If it bleeds, it leads. Never forget that the ratings were never higher than during the OJ trial. They wanted the city to burn. They would have been happy if Los Angeles burned for a year. It would have been good for their pocketbook. So if you say to yourself, why is it all happening? You have to point your finger at the media. I mean, they did show yesterday the black man actually executing the cop. Do you remember that one? They actually showed pictures of him shooting the cop and then standing over him with his rifle and pumping 4 more rounds into him as the cop lay dying. Did you see that on television? Was that appropriate to put on the television? It's been played over and over again. How does a cop get up in the morning and go to work the next day? That's what I want to know. I want to know. I mean, frankly, I don't know how anyone could go into this field of work. I have no idea, because if we don't support our police now and the good ones leave, or the good guys who want to go into police work don't go into it, tell me who you're going to have in the police. You're going to have the equivalent of the Mexican police, the federales. And if you think that that's good for your society, then you're sicker than I think. Then you're really sick. KSFO, Fred, welcome to the Savage Nation.
Good afternoon, Michael. I'm speechless that Fox News last night aired the execution of that police officer. And it really pisses me off to no end. I have family and very good friends that are police officers. And when I'm speaking to them, and I know they're at work, particularly with family members, the way I end every call with them is, be careful. It's you or them, and remember, 2 to the head, 1 to the chest. Michael, I don't...
All right, I'm sorry, but the phone is very hard to hear. I couldn't even understand what he was saying. I heard a few of the words. It's not the man's fault. Just cell phones and talk radio don't work very well. WDRC in Connecticut, Rich. Go ahead, please. You're on the Savage Nation.
Thank you, Dr. Savage, for having me. I'm a law enforcement officer for 18 years in Connecticut, one of the most liberal states in all the union. I'm also a firearms instructor here as well. The majority of departments, if not all departments, have less lethal options, whether it's beanbag rounds, whether it's taser rounds, taser shotguns. But the fact of the matter is this. If you're going to a gun call, we have those options available. There is no way that we're going to be using We have the ability to use less lethal, but we also need lethal cover as well. We don't just, this isn't Hollywood, this isn't a movie where you're going to shoot the gun out of somebody's hand. Rubber bullets aren't the answer, and more often than not, tasers aren't the answer. We have the ability to use them depending on the situation, but a gun call like they got called on in the recent shooting down in Louisiana was a gun call. You bring a gun to a gun call. You don't bring a taser to a gunfight.
You know, I got to interject. You're an expert in this area. I'm not. I have some familiarity, though, with firearms training for reasons I once described, which I don't care to go into right now. But during my extensive training for this particular experience, I watched a film about a man with a knife facing a man with a gun. And they showed us that within a few seconds, the man with a knife, unless he was stopped, once he got within a certain distance of the man with a gun, he could kill you with a knife within a few seconds. Do you remember? You know what I'm referring to, right?
Yeah, it takes about maybe about a second and a half or 1.2 seconds, and I think the effective range is maybe 12 to 20 feet where somebody...
Right, so that's why when you see a cop saying, put the knife down, and the guy is advancing on them with a knife, they are authorized and logically correct to kill that man.
Absolutely. You're there to protect yourself or the lives of others or your fellow officer. It's very simple.
Well, but I didn't know that till I took the training, and it just shows you how the average person doesn't understand what a man with a knife can do against a cop with a gun unless the cop puts that man down once he enters a certain zone within a certain range of him. They have no idea what a cop faces in a split second, what kind of decisions they have to make sure they go home that night. It was a film that I had seen, the training film, with a Filipino expert at using knives. I don't know if that's still being shown around the police training institutions, but there are some very, very skilled knife fighters who are as deadly as anything you could ever imagine, and the average person doesn't know that. Now, you want to go to the next step? There are people who have hands that could kill you. Forget a knife. Take a 250-pound muscular man, and he gets his hands around your neck. What happens then?
Right. Every call is a gun call, because even if this person is not a skilled fighter, doesn't have a knife, the police officer is bringing his gun to that call, and somebody can easily disarm that officer within a matter of seconds. So that's the way we train. That's the way I train most of my guys anyways, and that's the way hopefully all law enforcement is handling situations.
Okay, my friend, thanks for calling from Connecticut. This is a very trying day for all of us, only it's gotten worse today, not better. There are many reasons for it, primarily the media, and secondarily because of the kielbasa eater in Poland who did not dampen down the flames, but threw lighter fluid on the flames as he continued his march across the globe.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust to protect my wealth with gold and silver. Call 800-BUICOIN. The organizer wants division. He got it. Let's go back to the number one question of the day. Was the marching route published in advance? I cannot find it. We searched all day. So if the marching route of the Black Lives Matter movement in Dallas was not published, how did the sniper or snipers know where the marchers would be and get ready to shoot the police in the back? Next question. Well, it means somebody in the Black Lives Matter movement or someone in the city of Dallas who knew the marching route or someone else who knew the marching route divulged it to the assassins and set up the kill zone. Therefore, the investigation has to focus only on this. The rest of it is a false narrative. And where does the hatred come from in the heads of these haters? Well, here's one for you that you're not going to read in the San Francisco Chronicle, who's concerned about the homeless, the poor oppressed homeless people. The sister of the vermin, Mika Johnson, condoned violence against police in a Facebook post before the Dallas massacre. On Wednesday, she said, "I'm tired of you all trying to be on these cops' side, making it okay based off irrelevant info when our own get killed over unjust S," wrote Nicole Johnson Wednesday. And then she wrote more. She wrote, "White people have and will continue to kill us off. The only difference is they serve the system, hiding behind that blue suit, and get off easy murdering civilians. That's very literate. Where did the dummy get these ideas from? Who put this garbage in the dummy's head? And by the way, she deleted the damning post a short time later. But the dummies are getting the messages from somebody who's putting the messages in the dummies' heads. Who is putting this hatred in the heads of the pea-brains? I'll let you figure it out. Go watch Wolf Blitzer. Go watch MSNBC. Go listen to the president. You'll figure it out pretty quick.